Would you like to get your bookkeeping completely out of the way so that you can concentrate on running your business? Would you like to spend the absolute least amount of time doing bookkeeping so that you can turn your full attention to running your business and making it flourish? Well, then you need to take this course, QuickBooks Desktop Crash Course. It's the fastest and easiest way to learn QuickBooks Desktop. You will quickly and easily learn how to record all the transactions from your bank and credit card statements into QuickBooks so that QuickBooks can turn around and quickly and easily give you all the financial reports you need. You will quickly and easily be able to generate a profit and loss report that shows how well your company did during a period of time. You'll also be able to generate a balance sheet that compares what your company has to what your company owes so that you can easily see the financial position of your company. My name is Mark Smolin. I'm the founder and CEO of Worldwide QuickBooks. I personally guarantee you the clearest possible explanation for only the topics that a small business owner needs to use QuickBooks to run their business and keep their financial records. This tutorial will not waste 1 second of your time with a topic that you don't need the way all the other Introduction to QuickBooks Online tutorials will do. And if that's not enough, you have the benefit of a live teacher because I answer all my students' questions immediately if you simply leave any question you have in the comments section below. That's right. Just by watching a little of this YouTube tutorial every day, you will have everything your small business needs to manage your books and records using QuickBooks Online, and it's all free. How can I promise that you will learn so much so fast in this course? Well, that's because most companies only have one area of data to manage, and it's called the general ledger. The computer calls it the chart of accounts, and in the days before the computer, it was simply the main book, the main place that you would record your transactions, and each page in the book was simply a different set of transactions that you would record. You see, if you were a large corporation, you would need an in-house bookkeeper because there would be other areas of data to manage in addition to the general ledger. Large companies need to keep track of which customers owe them and what the continuous running balance is of each customer. Large companies even owe their vendors who give them service for several months at a time and have to keep records of which vendor is owed for what bill and why. In fact, some companies even sell merchandise and they need a separate area of records just to keep track of their profit and their quantity on hand. But if you're a typical small business owner, you don't need any of that. All you have to keep records of the general ledger. And that's why 90% of small business owners using QuickBooks Desktop can benefit from this course because it allows you to do the absolute minimum amount of bookkeeping necessary. And if it turns out you need any other feature or detail, then I strongly recommend that you finish this course first. That's because it will give you a full foundation of QuickBooks Desktop and make it much easier to self-teach the rest of the QuickBooks that you need on your own. It's really a very smooth process. Most small companies just need to read the transactions from their bank statements and credit card statements and cash receipt slips and record each transaction one by one into the proper windows of QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Desktop will then automatically and immediately post those transactions to the general ledger, And then once the transactions are in the general ledger, QuickBooks will organize and summarize the transactions there and put the results and the ending balances onto one main report called the trial balance. But it's that report you need to pull off the numbers and put onto the financial statements that you're going to give your accountant, so your accountant can do all the taxes that your small company needs. And some of the numbers in the trial balance get placed on the balance sheet, and some of the numbers get placed on the profit and loss. But all of them get placed on either one so that you can see how well you did and you can check your financial position at the end of the period. Just stay with me and follow along step by step as we create a brand new file, and then we will use that file for the entire course. Once we create the file, I will show you how to input all the data you need. Then you'll be up and running and you'll be able to record transactions and manage your reports, and you'll have all your bookkeeping under control. And if you need to review any topic in this video, you can simply click in the description field, which is directly under the video as it runs. And if you click the Show More button, you will open up the entire description field where you can see the table of contents. And if you click on the time index of any specific chapter, the video will jump right to the chapter that you'd like to review. So this video makes everything easy. Just stay with me until the end.
Chapter 3. Creating a QuickBooks Company File.
Now you may well ask, what is a company file in QuickBooks Desktop? Well, it's simply a data file in the computer represented by an icon, just like Microsoft Word or Excel represents their files, or any other software where you can make a file and copy it onto a USB stick or send it as an email attachment, or one way or another easily transfer the file with all of the data to another computer. All of your company financial information is in that one file represented by that green little icon. So it's important to keep it safe and make sure that you can easily copy it anywhere. Now, in order to create the file, you just have to answer a few simple questions that QuickBooks is asking. So just answer the questions exactly as we do here, and just follow me step by step, and we will answer the questions in the quickest and simplest way for the fastest possible file setup. Now here we are in QuickBooks Desktop, and it does not matter if you have a screen that looks different from mine, because if you started the QuickBooks software, no matter what, you will have a file menu in the top left, even if your screen looks different. And the way to start creating the file is to click File, New Company. And of course, the New Company window opens up. We will do this for yourself, so we click here and we click Start Setup. Now, what we have to do is in the bottom right here, maybe you can't see it, it says Sign In Later. So we click Sign In Later and it allows us to skip. You might have to choose Sign In 7 days from now, but our company name is Vonda Video. And you can pause this video if you need a moment to type in any text. Now watch carefully. We have to click Help Me Choose, and we are going to choose Other None. This relates to the chart of accounts, and if you want to learn it properly, you will not choose one of the sample chart of accounts. You will build your own chart of accounts with us, and that's why we click Other None and click OK. When it comes to the business type, we click the pull down and we also choose Other None because we want an express startup. Now, they do require that you put in an email address. And of course, again, you can pause the video. Now, regarding the rest of the company information, we're going to momentarily skip this because I'm going to show you how you can come back and add and edit this within the file. So for now, we're just going to click Create Company. Once QuickBooks is finished creating the company, there will be a huge number of distracting pop-ups that are offering you help and other products that the company offers. Whatever they happen to be, just close them so that you have a nice, neat desktop working with me during QuickBooks. Now, once you create the file, you may well ask, where is the file that I just created? Well, if you're looking at QuickBooks, you can push F2 on your keyboard for that information and other important information about your license number and so on. So when you're looking at your QuickBooks, push F2 on the keyboard and the product information window will come up. The file information is right here, and where it says location, this is telling you the folder and path that your file is in. And if you need to find it quickly, just highlight the path without the name of the file. Just highlight, copy, open any folder, and paste it into the address bar, and then you will jump to that folder and you will see the file that you just created. And you can right-click and copy or cut it and bring it to any place you like. Now, when you look at your file in the folder, you may notice that for every file you create, there's a green file with the name that you put, and there are other files that come along with it. You can ignore the other files that come along with the green file. They're just extra data that the computer uses to process when you use QuickBooks. But it's the green file that's the important one, and that's the only one that you have to back up and copy. Now, you may well notice it has a name under the icon. That name is the computer's name for the file, but that's not necessarily the name that's going to appear on the reports and the documents from the company when you print. So, the way to change that name is to go into a special window inside QuickBooks Desktop called the My Company window. And you would open it by clicking Company, My Company. Then you get a window that has a little pencil tool in the top right that you can open and then type in the name and addresses that will appear on all company reports and documents. Now, this is the address that we skipped over. Let's see if we can enter it as the company name and address. So we can close this out and we click Company and we go down to My Company and we get the My Company window. Now we click the pencil tool and we're able to enter the name and address properly. And you can pause the video if I'm typing too quickly. Now you can click OK, unless of course in a real situation you would have the phone number, email, and website of the company. Now after you click OK, QuickBooks says you are required to update the legal address as well. So you click Yes and you type in the same thing. And of course, Once you click OK, you've updated your company name and address and legal address, and these are the text that will appear when you print company documents and company reports.
Chapter 4. Managing the Preferences window.
Now you may well ask, what are the preferences? In QuickBooks, the preferences are the settings, the defaults, the options that you have available. In short, they are the automatic behaviors of the software unless you specifically say differently. They determine what features are available for you to use or not use, and we will learn easily how to navigate the Preferences window. From the top left, we click Edit, Preferences. You may notice that if you click on a different category of preference in the left panel, the options and the settings that are available in the center window will change. You may also notice that each category of preference has both a My Preference tab and a Company Preference tab. So you have to be able to scroll up and down to the category of preference you're looking for, and you must also remember which of the two tabs the setting or the options is in. But let's take a look at actually changing some of them. First, we'll change some personal preferences, and it's very easy. First, let's click properly to turn off the pop-up messages for any QuickBooks paid service, so we don't get distracted as we're doing our course. Well, how do we do that? No problem. You have to click on the General category of preferences, and then you click on the My Preferences tab. That will enable you to find this little button here, which is Turn Off Pop-up Messages for Products and Services. Click on the box so that you see the check mark. Once you see the check mark, in order to save the preference, you have to click OK, and then again click Edit Preferences to reopen the window to set the next preference. Let's try Auto Refresh Reports. That means as soon as we save a transaction, we want QuickBooks to update the open reports immediately. So where do we go? Well, we can click down in this category where it says Reports and Graphs. Notice My Preference is already chosen. So in the My Preference tab, we click Refresh Automatically. Then to save it, we have to click OK. Reopen the window, Edit Preferences. What else are we going to change? Now, we don't want QuickBooks to save any of the open windows that you were working on. That's because it will take a very long time to reboot the QuickBooks file if you leave a lot of windows open and you want QuickBooks to save it. So let's just fix that. We click the category of Desktop View, and what we're going to do is we're going to click Don't Save the Desktop. You see, if we don't save the desktop and we don't save the open windows, then QuickBooks will boot up the file much more quickly. And we also don't want to be distracted by the silly home page that pops up. That's a bunch of icons that we're not going to use in this course. So let's get rid of it while we're in the Preferences window. We're already in the desktop view and the My Preference, so just click to remove this check mark and then click OK, and we will not be distracted with the home page. And now let's set the company preferences. There's really only one that we need to set for this course because we're doing a very simple company for abbreviated bookkeeping. Let's just turn off the date warning for pop-ups for transactions that we record that are far in the future or far in the past from whatever the actual date is. This way we can put in example transactions far in the past or far in the future without being distracted by that pop-up. So again, we click Edit, Preferences, and in the area of Accounting, we click the accounting category and we click company preference. And you see these two little boxes here? Click to remove the check marks so we don't get the warnings for transactions that are far in the past or far in the future, because QuickBooks doesn't really understand that we're simply practicing and learning with example transactions. So just click OK and be aware that as your company gets more complex, you might have to return to the Preferences window.
Chapter 5. Input list of customers and vendors.
Both customers and vendors each have a special window in QuickBooks to manage their data. The customer has the Customer Center and the vendors have the Vendor Center. And they both behave the same way. They're both like a little Rolodex from the days before the computer, where business people would keep track of all the customer and vendors' addresses, phone numbers, and other vital information, like all their important transactions and any special notes that related to that customer or that vendor could usually be found in the little Rolodex. Now, in QuickBooks, that information is found in the Customer and Vendor Center windows. You see, the Customer Center allows you to find any of the customers that you put on the customer list just by searching by name. And then once you find and choose that customer, you will see all the transactions and all the special notes regarding that customer in the main body of the Customer Information window, down here by the little feature tabs that make it easy for you to manage your customers and vendors. So this is the example customer list that we will use. And because this is a crash course, we only need 2 customers just to show the idea of how QuickBooks Desktop works. And I'm going to show you how to put both of these customers on the customer list in the Customer Center. So here we are looking at QuickBooks. And in the main menu, there's one specific main menu choice for customers. And we click Customers, and the very top choice is the Customer Center. And again, because this is a crash course, we only need 2 customers for our example. Let's see how to put them in the Customer Center on the customer list. From the top left of the Customer Center window, we click New Customer, New Customer. Notice the New Customer window opens up, and it has different data fields for the different pieces of information that we need to type in. First, we're going to type in the name. And when we push the Tab key, notice the cursor moves to the different field. Usually, the customer name and the company name are the same. But if not, then of course, you have to understand that this field here is what's going to show up in this field behind it, so that you can search by name, and that's exactly what identifies the customer. And of course, you could pause the video to type in the rest of the information if I'm typing it in too quickly. So let's just do the rest of Alan. We'll come down to his address and type in under his name. And of course, you could pause this. Now, you also may notice that there are other, it gives you a little spell check. You just click OK. You may notice that there are other fields of data that we're skipping, but in a real situation, you would come here, type them in, and save it. You may also notice that we're skipping the other tabs of data. Now, these other tabs of customer information will not apply to us because we are doing express bookkeeping for a simple company. But as your company becomes more complex, you may need to put in sales tax information or job information and so on. But because we're finished typing in Alan for now, We can just click OK, and you see that Alan has been added to the list. And we can make the name column bigger by moving the mouse to the three dots and click and drag when you get the little cross. Let's try another customer. New customer. Now let's put in Betty's information. And I'm going to skip the phone number and all the other irrelevant information. It's irrelevant because we're just learning, but in a real situation, you would type it in. Now notice what happens when we click OK. You can see that they're both on the list. Notice when I click on Alan's name, I get Alan's address, and if he had transactions or notes, they would show up here. If I click on Betty's name, you would see if we had transactions with her. We see her address, and we'd see her notes and her transactions show up. And this makes it very easy to manage your long-term customer information. Now, the vendor center is 100% the same as the customer center. And because this is a crash course, we're not really going to bother putting in the name with the address and the phone number and all the other information that would be irrelevant when we're studying QuickBooks, especially for a crash course. But as long as we have their names on the list, we can use them in transactions, and you can always reopen the window very easily and add their address and phone number or any other data you need. Here, watch. We can close the Customer Center and click Vendor Center. And you notice the Vendor Center looks and behaves exactly the same as the Customer Center. So first we'll put in staples. New vendor, new, and for now, just put the name. And if we click OK, Staples is on the list. Now wait a minute. What if we wanted to go back to Staples and add an address or a phone number or something else? Well, all we would have to do is double click right on the name and we get the Edit Vendor window. And you'll notice the Edit Vendor window looks exactly the same as the New Vendor window, where we can put in the complex information in the other tabs, or we can add any address or change the phone number or do whatever we need with the permanent data from that vendor or with that vendor. And then we click OK and it's changed. So let's go ahead and put on the rest. Office Max, new vendor, Office Max, click OK. And QuickBooks Desktop gives us the ability to add multiple list items at once. Now, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we can put in the rest of the vendors much more quickly by doing this. New vendor, add multiple vendors. Notice you get a grid where you can actually have all the vendor information across rows like this in Excel or some other spreadsheet program, and you can copy and paste them here. We're not going to paste, we're just only going to type in the information we need directly, and it will still save time. But you can imagine if we had all the real vendor data written in Excel, how much time it would save. So let's add UPS and then just click under it, FedEx. Con Edison is the electric company here in New York. And of course, Vonda has a repair person. And click Save the Changes, and it confirms how many records have been entered in the multiple vendor window. So you have several choices if you need to enter multiple vendors. And again, double click and put back any information you like.
Chapter 6. Managing the Chart of Accounts.
Now you may well ask, what is the chart of accounts? Well, in the days before the computer, the chart of accounts was called the general ledger. And basically it was a book where each page in the book listed and recorded a separate category of the financial transactions of the company. Now that we have the computer, it's the same exact idea, but each page in the book is basically a little separate file or section within the chart of accounts. It's supposed to replicate the functionality of having a book where each page would record a different category of transactions. For example, the first page might be called video income, where you would record every deposit you made where you earned income specifically for that one service video. This way you could compare it to the other page that recorded your income from another service, so you would be able to tell where your money is coming in from. Some of the other pages in the general ledger and chart of accounts would also be expense categories that you would write down. For example, delivery expense might be the page that you write down every time you pay for a company delivery. And whether you pay FedEx or UPS, it wouldn't matter. If that's the service you paid for, then that would be the page that you would write down that transaction. Now, of course, you will need an account in the chart of accounts for each separate expense you have, so you can record and find the total of that expense. You would need a separate account in the chart of accounts for each of the different ways that you earn income, so that you could record them on separate pages and track them separately. And because the bank and credit card companies are also keeping records of your account, you should also have a separate page or a separate account in the chart of accounts for each bank type of account you have and each credit card you have. This way you can record those transactions on separate files in separate areas so that you could find the total and always know the running balance. Now, in the days before the computer, it didn't look like this. Basically, the general ledger was a book like you saw a moment ago, where each page in the book looked like a spreadsheet with columns that had different widths. And whenever you had a transaction that related to that specific category, you would record each piece of data regarding that transaction across the row. So each row represented a transaction, and each column represented a section of data for each transaction. Recording it logically in this way made it very clear what transactions we had. And although it was helpful to look at the pages of the listed transactions, the most important results came from summarizing and totaling the numbers. Once we got the total of every account in the chart of accounts, we could then use those totals for valuable insights. We would then organize those totals onto the financial statements that we've been speaking about so that we can have a clear picture of what's going on in the business. For example, the results of all the income and expenses would be listed on a report called the profit and loss. And the profit and loss would clearly show how well your company did during a specific period of time. And the other numbers that did not go on the profit and loss went on another report, a different report called the balance sheet. And the balance sheet's purpose is to show you what you have compared to what you owe. And of course, this is a very abbreviated balance sheet, but you can see if you compare your bank account's balance to your credit card balances, you'll have a good sense of the financial position of the company. And that's the reason we use the chart of accounts. And all of this accounting ultimately results in taking the ending balance of each account and listing it on our good friend, the trial balance. Once the trial balance confirms that all the numbers are correct, then we would take some of those numbers and put them on a balance sheet, and put the rest of the trial balance numbers on the profit and loss. And it's the two financial statements that experts in business and financial people would look at to judge how well your business is doing and what position your company is in. So that's how we would use the general ledger in a common sense way. Of course, the financial statements would be presented to people who would need to know the financial position and how well the company is doing. In large companies, it's usually the upper management or the stockholders, but no matter what type of company you have, you will ultimately have to report the ending balances in your general ledger to the IRS. So that's how it works when you're using a book for the general ledger, and that's exactly how it works in the computer. Now here's Vonda's example chart of accounts. Notice that each account has both a name and an account type. Now the name can be anything you like it to be, as long as you remember that whatever you type in will show up on the reports exactly as you type it in. And when we add the names on the account list, we will make sure in this course that all of our accounts that we add will be put in capital letters. That's because it will make it much easier to distinguish between the accounts that we added that we need and the accounts that QuickBooks added for us. And keep in mind, again, whatever you type in is exactly the way it's going to show up on the profit and loss and the balance sheet, so be very careful how you type in the name. Now, account type is a different story. Account type is something you're going to choose from a preset pull-down list. And it's the account type that you assign to the account that determines what type of transactions that QuickBooks is going to allow you to record in that account. And the account type you choose also determines what position that account will appear on your financial statements when you finally run the reports. But for now, let's go ahead and record all of Vonda's accounts into her chart of account list. Now this chart of accounts window behaves the same way that all the other list windows in QuickBooks Desktop behaves. That means that the bottom left button of any list window controls the list. So from the bottom left, we click Account New. Now the new account window opens up, first asking us to choose the account type of the account we're adding. And the first one on the list was bank. Now notice when we choose an account type, this nice window is explaining a little bit about what types of accounts should be assigned this account type. We click Continue, and then we get this other window here. Now, we already chose the account type, but you have a second chance to make it correct when this window pops up. Now we click in the name field and make sure the cap locks is on. And now when we click Save and Close and we click No for the advertisement, then we can see the account that we just created just got added to the chart of accounts. Watch, we can do the next one. Account New. Notice if we choose a different type, we get a different description in the right. But right now we're still doing bank type of account according to our list. And the next one, when we click Continue, is a bank type of account, and it's cash in Chase Bank. So we just type the name. Usually we put the last four digits of the account number with the name. And again, when we click Save and Close and click No for the distracting pop-up, you see that one was added. But now we can add a bunch right from the Add Account window by clicking Save and New instead of Save and Close. So we're going to put Company Credit Card and we're going to put Fonda's Capital Investment. Watch. Account New. This one is a credit card type of account, so we click. Then when we click Continue, the correct account type is chosen. Now, instead of clicking Save and Close, watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to click Save and New. That will save it on the list of the accounts, but keep this window open so that we can smoothly add the rest. And if we take a peek, we see we're up to Fonda's Capital Investment equity type of account. So we click Equity from the pull down and type in and again, click Save and New. What's the next one? Fonda's Withdrawals. And of course, we keep hitting Save and New, and the window stays open, and it goes on the list. Let's do one more together. Editing Income is an income type of account. So, Income. And of course, when we click Save and New, it shows up on the list. You can continue on your own to put in video income and the 4 expenses that we are using because you've already seen how I put them on the list. And when you're done, your chart of accounts list should look the same as mine. So, go ahead and finish putting in the remaining 5 accounts. Make sure that the list looks like this. Now, mind you, if you make a mistake, it's no problem at all. You see, all you have to do is reopen the account window and edit the account. So watch. If I accidentally spelled withdrawals wrong, what I would do is first, I would reopen the chart of accounts window. List, chart of accounts. Then I would click on the account that needs editing, and at the moment that's selected, in the bottom left, I would click Account, Edit. And notice the Edit Account window looks just like the Add Account window, and I can change the name or change the type, and then after clicking Save and Close, the change would be reflected in the chart of accounts. Now, while we're on the subject, you're probably going to ask how to remove an account. If you need to remove an account with no activity, you can just click Delete. Watch. If I wanted to remove the payroll expenses, for example, or cost of goods sold, let's say, I don't know what you have. Different versions of QuickBooks put different accounts on the list automatically. But if you click on the one you want to remove and you click Account, Delete. If it has no transactions, you can click OK, and it will simply remove it from the list. But what if you wanted to remove an account that did have activity and did have transactions? Well, then QuickBooks will not allow you to delete it. It will allow you to make it inactive. So let's take a look at what that means. If I click on this account because I'm not using it, but I have some transactions for some reason recorded, watch. I can click Account and I can click Make Inactive. Now it looks like it has completely disappeared from the list. However, if I click this button and I ask QuickBooks to include the inactive accounts, it'll show me that one of them is inactive and it puts a little X next to it. So if I don't want a cluttered list, I can click to remove this and see only the accounts that are active. But I can click to put it back to see the ones that are inactive. Click on the inactive one, then in the bottom left, click Make Account Active. Now you can see it shows up even though this button is not checked. And that's how you manage the chart of accounts. So go ahead and finish putting in the rest of the accounts, put in video income and the 4 expenses just like I did, and I will see you in the next video.
Chapter 7. Preparing and managing the icon bar.
This is a special setup step for perfect learning, because if you learn how to customize reports at the beginning, you'll be able to have total control over what's going on in your desktop file. And you will save huge amounts of time by placing those reports and other shortcuts in the icon bar. And the two things go perfectly together. You see, QuickBooks can be challenging at the beginning because there are so many menu choices to remember. Look, if I click Customers, it's hard to fish around and remember which one I need to look for. Same thing with Company, Vendors, Banking, or anything else. But if you had one central place for everything you needed, then using QuickBooks Desktop would be smooth and easy. And that one central place for only the few things that an Express Simple company needs is a place called the icon bar. And it's a place where you can put all the different shortcuts you need. So you can put shortcuts to input transactions like the deposit window, the credit card window, and the check window. And this way you don't have to go fishing for them through the huge amount of menu choices in the main menu. Also, you can put a section of the icon bar just for reports, so you can immediately get the results you need from reports like the trial balance, transaction lists that help you find what you recorded, and there's even a special report to manage and find all of the transactions that you deleted. And it's very easy to use. Once the icon bar is set up, all you have to do is click the icon and that window will appear the same way as if you opened it from the main menu. For example, if I click the deposit icon, then the deposit window would open up and I'd be able to record deposits the same way as if I opened it from the main menu. And if I put a shortcut for the check window, then I can just click that icon and the check window will open right away. But one of the best things is adding the reports. But first, let's add things one at a time. Let's find out how to add the deposit window to the icon bar. Well, it's very simple. First, we have to move the icon bar from the left panel to the top to make it easy. So in the top left, we click View, and we go down to Top Icon Bar. And now we can see it right under the main menu, and it's much more clear. Now we have to remove the icons that QuickBooks put in order for us to put the shortcuts that we need. So again, in the top left we click View, and this time we click Customize Icon Bar. And we get a window that shows a list of every item that's currently in the icon bar. We can click on each item and then click Delete, and you will see it disappear. Click here, delete, it's gone. Click My Company, delete, it's gone. In fact, you have to click Delete to remove everything that QuickBooks automatically put. And you must click OK, because if you click Cancel, they will all come back. View, Customize Icon Bar, and just keep clicking Delete until they're all gone. Now when you click OK, you have a nice clean icon bar. So now let's add our first window, the deposit window. From the main menu, we click Banking, Make Deposit. And at the moment the deposit window is the active window, we click View, Add Make Deposit to the icon bar, and click OK. Now we can close the window, click on the icon, and it opens up 1, 2, 3. What else will we add? Well, let's add the checks window. Banking, write checks. And at the moment the checks window is the active window, we click View, add write checks to the icon bar, and click OK. Close the window. What else are we supposed to add? What about the credit card charges? No problem. Banking, and then we go down to Enter Credit Card Charges. And at the moment that window is the active window, we can click View and add Enter Credit Card Charges to the icon bar and click OK. And when we close it out, we can click on it, and you can see it opens the same way without us having to fish around and hunt in the main menu. Now at this point, you probably want to add separators so you can clearly see the difference between the windows that you put in the transactions and the reports that get out the results. And it's very easy. View, Customize Icon Bar, click where you want the separator to appear, 1, 2, 3, and click OK. And you can see there are 3 little separators ready for us to put stuff on the other side of the icon bar. And now we'll put the reports that we need. Now we learned earlier that we get our results from the reports, and we're going to learn how to customize them as part of our setup. And we will customize only the reports that we need. And the icon bar will remember the customization and remember how it looked after we saved it. So first we add the trial balance. It's the main financial report, and it shows the total of all balances of each account in the chart of accounts. And we will customize the date to show the results of all transactions regardless of date. So first we have to open it from the main menu. We click Reports, Accountant and Taxes, and go across to the trial balance. Now notice when we first open it, by default, it shows only the well, we didn't record any transactions, but it would show only the transactions for the last month based on today's calendar date. You need to scroll all the way up to the very top choice and choose All. This tells QuickBooks that we want the results of all transactions regardless of date. And now we want to customize it further. We want to make the font bigger so it's nice and clear when we check the results. And this is how you customize any of the QuickBooks Desktop reports. All QuickBooks reports have the same buttons across the top right under the title bar. And they all have in the top left a Customize Report button. That will open up the Modify Report window, and this is the same window for all reports that you need to customize in QuickBooks Desktop. We'll click Fonts and Numbers and click Change Font and make the size 12 and click OK. Should we change all of them? Yes. Then when we click OK, you can see that the fonts have been changed. We could even make the column wider by clicking the 3 dots. When we get the T, we click and drag. And now that the trial balance looks exactly the way we need it to look, we can click View, add trial balance to the icon bar, and click OK. Now when we close it out, we'll get a pop-up, and we will click the Don't Bother Me box and then click No. But the point is that when I open it from the icon bar, it remembers the date range and it remembers the font size. But if I went all the way back and reopened it from the main menu by clicking Reports, Accountant and Taxes, Trial Balance, you see when you reopen it from the main menu, it has the original date range and the original font. But if you open it from the icon bar, it remembers everything that we customized. And that's why customizing reports goes hand in hand with saving them in the icon bar. So let's save the rest of the reports that we're going to use. Let's open the profit and loss and customize that as well. So we can close all of these. And again, from the main menu, we click Reports, Company and Financial, Profit and Loss Standard. And at the moment the report is open, we click in the top left and we click All. Now it shows the results of all transactions. And then we click View, add Profit and Loss to the icon bar, and click OK. What else do we want to put up here? What about the balance sheet? Reports, Company and Financial, and go across to Balance Sheet Standard. Again, choose the pull down All. And of course, we want to maybe open it a little. And now that it looks the way we need it to look, we click View, add Balance Sheet to the icon bar, and click OK. What other reports would we need? Well, it's nice to have a transaction list by customer and a transaction list by vendor. Reports, Customers and Receivables, Transaction List by Customer. This one, we have to click the pull down, click All. Now notice there are several windows open, but if the transaction list by customer is the active one brought forward, that's the one that will show up in the View menu when you click Add to the icon bar. And it will be the same thing for vendors. Reports, Vendors and Payable, Transaction List by Vendor. Make the date range All, and then click View, add Transaction List by Vendor to the icon bar. Congratulations! We are finished with the entire setup. We did it in less than an hour and covered everything clearly and thoroughly. Now you're ready to use your QuickBooks Desktop easily and smoothly. When you have a transaction, just record it in one of the buttons on the left. And when you need to see the results, just click the reports on the right. And the rest of your QuickBooks experience will be smooth and easy.
Chapter 8. Recording Deposits.
The Make Deposit window looks just like a typical deposit slip that you would fill out at the bank when you make a deposit. And there's a field for each piece of information that's on the deposit slip. When you fill out the deposit slip, you will always have a space for what account you're recording the deposit in, whom you received the money for, when you received the money, how much money it was, and why did you receive it. So if those are the fields of data on the deposit slip, then it should be very easy for you to record them in the Make Deposit window. But if you are making a deposit, there can be only two reasons why you now have money. Either you received some income from a service that Vonda provided, or Vonda took money from her own personal bank account that was separate from the business and then placed and deposited it into the company bank account. And those are the only two reasons that money comes into a company, especially if you only have a service business. Now, as soon as we record the transaction of a deposit and we save the deposit window, the results will immediately show in the trial balance. And as we remember, the trial balance is our main report where we check the results after each transaction to see if the totals are accurate. For example, let's imagine on January 1, Vonda deposited $3,000 from customer Allen because she videotaped a wedding that was done today on January 1. What will be the result in the trial balance at the moment Vonda records that transaction into the deposit window? Well, Chase Bank just received $3,000, So Chase Bank should show up for the first time as $3,000. And the reason we have $3,000 more in Chase Bank is because we did a video job. So video income will show up for the first time as $3,000. And this is the way the trial balance should look after we record our first deposit. From the main menu, we click Banking, Make Deposit. Now, we have to make sure that we choose the correct bank type of account that we're recording the transaction in. Now we click once on the date box to get the calendar, click back twice or however many times you need to go to January and click January 1. Notice we can further edit the date by clicking in the box and going back and typing in the characters we need, and we're pretending this is happening on January 1 of 2024. Click directly under the words Received From, and then click the pull-down arrow to click and choose the correct customer. Now, the reason for the deposit is reflected in the From account field. Click the pull-down arrow, and we choose Video Income, because that's the reason we got the money. And on the same row, we click in the Amount field, type in the amount, and push Tab. Now when we click Save and Close, we can open the trial balance, and you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Chase Bank became $3,000, and video income became $3,000. Let's try a second example. Let's imagine on January 2nd, we deposited $1,500 from customer Betty for an editing job that was done on January 2nd. So what will be the results in the trial balance after we record this second transaction? Well, editing income will show up for the first time as $1,500 because we just earned $1,500 in editing income. And because we have $1,500 more in the bank balance will automatically increase to $4,500. From the main menu, we click Banking, Make Deposit. We make sure it's the correct bank account. We click on the calendar box to put the correct date and edit the numbers as needed. We click directly under the Received From field to get the pull down. Click the pull down and choose Betty. The reason we're getting this money from Betty is editing income, and the amount $1,500. Now make sure that each of the fields of data have everything that I have, and then when you click Save and Close, you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Chase Bank increased to $4,500, and editing income showed up for the first time as $1,500. Now let's try a third example. Let's imagine on January 3rd, Vonda deposited $1,000 into the Chase company bank account from her personal non-business funds. So what would be the result in the trial balance after she records money from her personal pocket going into the business bank account? Well, the bank account balance will increase by $1,000 and become $5,500. And because this is the first investment from her pocket that we're recording, Vonda's capital investment will show up for the first time in the amount that she put in, $1,000. From the main menu, we click Banking, Make Deposit. We make sure it's the correct account. We click on the date box to choose the correct date. We click directly under Received From, and with the pull down arrow, we can actually skip this. If it's the owner and you're doing express bookkeeping, you don't really have to put a name with deposits that are investments from the owner. But you do have to click the pull down and choose Vonda's Capital Investment and click in the amount field and type in $1,000. Now when we click Save and Close, the results are exactly as what we expected. You can see the bank account is now $5,500 and Vonda's Capital Investment showed up for the first time as $1,000. Now you may well ask, what if you made a mistake? What if you saved some wrong data and need to fix it? No problem. All you have to do is reopen the transaction and change it. Take a look. You can see all of these are total ending balances. But if I wanted to fix one of them, all I would have to do is double click on the total of that account and a window would open up showing me a list of every transaction that leads up to that total. And if I wanted to change something, all I would have to do is double click right on that transaction and the very window that I used to record that transaction will open up and I can change anything I want. And once I change it, the results in the reports will change immediately. So let's have some fun. Let's make January 2nd become $1 million and see what happens. Well, like I said, we can change any of these data fields. So if I click and drag to overwrite the amount in the amount field, and I make it $1 million, look what happens when I click Save and Close. Aha, it asks me if I'm absolutely sure. And when I click yes, you can see that amount has changed in the account list that we opened up from the trial balance, and the total has changed as well. In fact, if we bring forward the trial balance, you can see that the numbers are now a terrible mess as a result. You may also notice that only the two accounts that are affected by that deposit were changed. And I can double click and I can open it up and I could fix it from this window, or I could open it up from the Chase Bank by double clicking the total, double clicking right on the number and fix it there as well. That's a different one. This is the $1 million is the one that I want to double click. So now that you know how to find and fix things, let's fix it and make it correct. So just remember, you can open it from the same transaction from any report. So look, I can change this back to 1,500 and save and close. Click yes. And now all the numbers are correct in my trial balance. And if I double click, I get the right numbers.
Chapter 9, Checks and Expenses.
Now you may well ask, why would we record a check or expense in our QuickBooks records? Well, there can be only two possible reasons. Either we're paying a business-related expense, or the owner is taking money out of the company bank account for personal reasons. So that should make recording this type of transaction very simple. Just remember the rule in QuickBooks Desktop. Any reduction to the company bank account is recorded in the write checks window. And it does not matter if it's an ATM withdrawal. It does not matter if it is a debit card charge or an ACH transfer to another bank account. If the company bank account is being reduced, you record any of those in the write checks window. And the check window has a space for every field of data you need. There's a space for what bank account you use, whom you're paying the money to, when you're paying the money, how much you're paying for, and the reason why. And just like making a deposit, as soon as we record a check, the results will immediately show up in the trial balance. For example, let's imagine on January 4th, we paid UPS $500 for a delivery, and we paid with check number 661. So at the moment we record this transaction, what will be the result in the trial balance? Well, the cash account has decreased by 500, so that will go down to 5,000. And because this is the first time we're paying for delivery, delivery expense will show up for the first time as $500. Now you can open the checks window by clicking from the main menu, Banking, Write a Check, and here is the checks window. You could also click the icon shortcut, and that would save you time. Now you must make sure you're paying the money from the correct bank account, and just click the Don't Bother Me box when defaults and messages pop up, and then click OK. Now you have to click on the calendar box to bring the date, the calendar, and then go back to the month we're working on and click on the proper date. Remember, you can also edit the individual numbers in the date box to get the date that you want. Now we are paying UPS. So of course we click the pull down and click their name. And the amount we're paying is $500. Now we know that the reason we're paying is delivery expense. So to put the reason, which is the proper expense account, we click directly under the word account to bring the pull down arrow. And once we click on the arrow, we can choose the proper expense, delivery expense. Now, we're almost finished. We put in the what, the when, the who, the how much, and why. But there's one more thing to remember. You need to remove the Print Later button. Click here, because we will not print the checks from QuickBooks Online. Our story is Express Bookkeeping, which means we already have handwritten checks, but you will not be able to put in the check number unless you click to remove the Print Later button, and then it gives you the ability to type in the number of the physical check that you wrote and mailed out. Good. Now, here at the bottom, when we click Save and Close, we can click to open the trial balance, and you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Cash in bank decreased to $5,000, and delivery expense showed up for the first time as $500. And now let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 5th, we paid Office Max $800 for supplies, and we paid with the Chase Bank debit card and received this reference number. The transaction number can either be the check number if you're writing a check, or the reference number on the ATM slip or debit card slip at the moment you charge from the company bank account. And that's the number that we'll put in the Write Checks field. And again, remember, any reduction of the bank account is recorded in the Write Checks window, even a debit card charge. So that's what the reference number is, and this is the information. What will be the result in the trial balance after we record this transaction? Well, if we're buying supplies for the first time, supplies expense will show up in the amount that we paid for, $800. And because we just paid $800 from the company bank account, the balance of the company bank account will decrease and become $4,200. So from the main menu, we can click Banking, Write a Check, or we can click the icon check and the checks window will open right up for us. Now, you may notice that it remembered the last reference number was 661, and it's trying to help us by giving us the next one in succession. It does not know that this is a debit card charge and that we're not writing checks in order. So we have to change the number to the number on the slip. And of course, double check that you're paying from the correct bank account. Click once on the pull down arrow to choose the proper vendor. Notice supplies expense comes up because I had recorded something before, but you can click under the word account for the pull down and choose supplies expense. Put in the amount and don't forget to advance the date to the date of the actual transaction. Now we have the correct reference number from the debit card slip, the correct vendor, bank account, date, amount, and the proper expense account. And now we're able to click Save and Close right from the bottom. And when we click to open the trial balance, the results are exactly as what we expected. Chase Bank has decreased to $4,200, and supplies expense showed up for the first time as $800. Now we'll do a third example. Let's imagine on January 6th, Vonda made an ATM withdrawal from the Chase business bank account for personal, non-business reasons, something like dental. And it's $200, and this is the long reference number that showed up on the ATM slip. So what will be the results if we record a $200 ATM withdrawal for non-business reasons? Well, Vonda's withdrawals will show up for the first time as $200 because this is the first time in our story that she's taking money for personal reasons. And because it came from the company bank account, the company bank account will decrease and become $4,000. So it's very simple. Check, and of course the reference number was 9988776. So it's a little different. And we make sure we're paying from the correct bank account. You don't need a payee if it's the owner and you're doing express bookkeeping. But the amount we took is $200. And the date that she took the money was January 6th. Now click once under the account field to bring the arrow. Click on the arrow to choose Vonda's withdrawals. Now we have all the information that we need about this transaction. And when we click Save and Close, you can see the results are exactly as what we expected. Vonda's withdrawals showed up for the first time as $200, and the Chase bank account has decreased to $4,000. Now you're probably asking, if these are not the numbers you have, what if you made a mistake? No problem. Just like we learned before, you can reopen any transaction and change it, and the results will change immediately. So let's do something fun. Let's pretend we wiped out the bank account on January 6th. So watch. If I double-click Vonda's withdrawal, I could double-click the bank account, and I get a list of transactions in the account, and I see the January 6th for $200, and I double-click and come back to the window. I could come back to the window the same way by double-clicking the same transaction in the other account. Vonda's withdrawals, here's the January 6th, double-click, and we're right back in the window. And if she wanted to clean out the bank account for personal non-business reasons, she would make it the full balance, save and close, click yes, and now you can see there's no money in the bank account and she took the whole thing. But let's fix it just to make the numbers right for the next video. Well, how do we do that? We could double click either the withdrawals or the bank account, go down to the last check, double click, make the number the proper amount by over typing and push tab. Make sure that it fixes it in the top and the bottom of the window, Save and close. Look, it's asking us if we want to make this change, just to be sure. Then we click yes. And if we look at the trial balance, the results are now all correct.
Chapter 10. Simple Practice Exercise Set.
This is what the trial balance should look like right now before you start the exercise. Make sure that the balances you see here are the same in your trial balance before you start. Now here are the practice transactions that you need to record. Notice they're the exact same types of transactions that we learned so far in this course. There's only 7 of them, and they're the exact same type. So if you forget how to record one of these, you have to go back to the video that taught you about that transaction and review how to record it. And when you finish, your trial balance should look like this. If you have any numbers that are different, you have to use the techniques that we learned in this course to find and fix your mistakes. And don't stop until you have these final numbers. It might also help you to look at the transaction list by vendor. Here is a list of all the transactions that we had with every vendor since the beginning of the course. So maybe by looking at this, it might help you find your mistakes if you have any. And then the natural question will be, what about the customer transactions? Well, that's an interesting point about QuickBooks Desktop. And we're going to talk later about the customer reports and the customer transactions, but for now, just use the trial balance and just use the vendor transaction list to make sure that your transactions are correct. And you will see all about this issue regarding customer transactions in a special video coming up later in the lesson. I wish you good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.
Chapter 11. Managing Cash Transactions.
There are always some cash transactions in any company, and there's nothing wrong with cash transactions. As long as you keep receipts and proper records, it's appropriate to make cash transactions for any company. There could be many reasons why it's more convenient to pay cash for things, even for a large company. And the record keeping for your cash on hand is exactly the same as it would be as if the cash were physically in the bank account. It doesn't matter where the cash is, the record keeping that we do in QuickBooks will be the same. You see, with a bank account, the bank account's balance will increase when we deposit to the bank account, meaning we physically put money in. And the bank account's balance will decrease when we pay from the bank account because the money's coming out. And it's the exact same thing with the company cash. No matter where you keep the company cash, whether it's a lockbox or the company cash is kept simply in the owner's wallet, you still are depositing to the company cash when you put cash in the place that the company keeps the cash. And it still decreases when you take that cash and you pay from that pile of cash for company expenses. And that's the reason why the record keeping for your cash on hand is exactly the same as the record keeping for your bank account. Now, just like your bank balance will always show as the current balance on the trial balance report, you'll have a separate account in the chart of accounts that shows a separate number that reflects the current balance of the company's physical cash on hand. When you record an increase into the lockbox for the cash on hand, you would use the same deposit window that you used to record bank deposits because you're putting money in to an account. And of course, as soon as you record it in the deposit window, the results in the trial balance will change immediately. The only difference is you have to make absolutely sure that you're choosing the correct account. In this case, the cash on hand account, when you're putting money in and you go to record that in the deposits window. And it would be the same exact thing for a check. If you go to record an expense, it's the exact same window that you would use to record an expense or a check from the bank account. And again, the results would change immediately in the trial balance. And again, the only difference is that when you go to record this check, even though you're not writing a check, you're paying cash, you still have to choose the cash on hand account in the checks window to tell QuickBooks which account the money is being paid from. Now you may well ask, where is the proof of a cash transaction? You see, these are the only transactions that a small company deals with that are not on statements that come from a bank or come from a credit card company or some financial institution. So, therefore, you must have the original paper receipts or deposit slips or any other source document that proves a cash transaction. And you have to keep them in a safe place the same way that you keep the cash in a safe place, because they're the only proof of a cash transaction. And when we do our example transactions, you just have to imagine that we're reading it off these paper receipts rather than reading it off the screen. For example, let's imagine on January 15th, Vonda, the owner, took $500 cash from her home, family, non-business cash and put it into the company cash lockbox to establish the fund. Well, what will be the result in the trial balance after this transaction? Well, Vonda invested $500 more into the company from her personal money, so Vonda's capital investment will increase by $500 and become $4,000. And because the company now has a cash lockbox, the account cash on hand will show up for the first time in the trial balance for the amount of the balance, $500. Like we said before, we click the deposit window, and the first thing you have to be careful of is making sure that you click the correct bank type of account and choose cash on hand. If this is the first time you're doing this, you get a little annoying pop-up, and the rule in this class is click the Don't Bother Me box and click OK. Now we have to set the date to the date of the transaction, click the calendar box and go back or forward to the date of this transaction, and in our little story, this is January 15th of 2024. Now, because it's a transaction with the owner and we're doing express bookkeeping, we don't really have to put the name. But you do have to click the pull down arrow and choose the account that represents the reason why we're getting this cash. And in this case, it's Vonda's capital investment. We click in the amount field, type in 500 and push tab. So this transaction is as easy as recording any other bank deposit. When we click Save and Close, we can look at the trial balance, and the results are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand showed up for the first time as 500, and Vonda's capital investment increased to 4,000. Now let's do an example where we're actually paying cash from the fund. Let's imagine on January 16th, we paid Office Max $50 for supplies, and we paid with the cash from the lockbox and got this receipt number. So what will be the result in the trial balance after we record this transaction? Well, we have $50 less in the cash account, in the cash box, so the balance of the cash on hand will decrease from 500 to 450. And the reason it decreased is because we purchased more supplies, so supplies will increase by $50 and become $1,650. We click check, just like we discussed before, and we have to put in the proper receipt number because it's not really a check. We just use the check window to record any reduction in any bank type of account, even if it's cash. And speaking of which, the most important thing to check is to make sure that you're recording the transaction in the correct bank type of account. I guess you have to type in the number again. Now, of course, you have to choose the vendor, Office Max, just like we did before. QuickBooks remembers it was associated with supplies expense, but you have to double check that. The amount of this transaction is $50, and don't forget to put the date of this transaction. In succession, we advance the date, and it's January 16th of 2024 in our little story. Now, when we click Save and Close, we get another annoying pop-up. We click the Don't Bother Me box so it doesn't pop up again, and we click OK. That will only happen if it's the first time. But look, if we click Refresh, the results are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand had decreased to $450, and supplies expense increased to $1,650. Now let's try another example where we are paying from the cash. Let's imagine on January 17th, Vonda paid Rex Repair $100 cash for a repair of her equipment and gave her a handwritten receipt with this number. So what will be the result in the trial balance after we pay $100 cash for more repair? Well, the repair expense will increase by $100 because we have $100 more in repair, so it will become $1,000. And because we paid the $100 from cash on hand will decrease by $100 and become $350. We click the check window and we make sure that we're choosing the correct account from the correct fund, cash on hand. We put in the receipt number from the little slip that represents the transaction for all these cash transactions. Now, of course, we put the date, the 17th, because that's the day it happened, on 2024, our little story. Then we choose Rex Repair. Notice QuickBooks remembers they go with repair expense, but you have to double check that. That will not always be the case. Type in the money amount on the top of the window like we learned. Push Tab. Confirm that it's the same on the bottom. Now when we click OK, the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand decreased to $350 and repair expense increased to $1,000. If you hit refresh, it will update the date to the most recently recorded transaction. Now, example 4 is the most interesting example. Let's imagine on January 18th, Vonda made an ATM withdrawal of $600 from Chase, and she put the money in the company cash lockbox. Well, if the money comes from the Chase bank account to the cash lockbox, $600, what will be the result? Well, the cash on hand has $600 more dollars, so that balance should increase to $950, and the company Chase bank account has $600 fewer dollars, so that should decrease to $5,800. But wait a minute. How do we record this? Well, there are several ways, but the most appropriate way to record replenishing the company cash from the company bank account is to use the transfer window, because you are transferring funds from one account to another. Even though one is physically with you and one is at the bank, There's really money going from one fund to another, and the transfer window is the appropriate window. And the good news is the transfer window is the most simple window in QuickBooks. There's really not much to explain. There's only 4 fields to fill out, and they're all self-explanatory. Just make sure you record this transaction and you get this result. So it's very simple. We click banking and then we click transfer funds. Now the date of the transfer is the 18th, and we're transferring from the Chase Bank to the cash on hand, and the amount $600. Now of course you can add notes and put in any other data that you like that will help. And when we click save and close, the results are exactly as what we expected. Cash on hand increased to $950, and the Chase Company bank account decreased to $5,800. Now I'd like to leave you with one final note regarding dealing with cash on hand. Sometimes in small companies with just one owner, the cash on hand can simply be the cash that the owner has in their wallet. And if the cash in the wallet is more than the balance that's indicated in QuickBooks for the cash on hand, then clearly the excess cash that's in the wallet belongs to the owner and is the owner's personal non-business cash. However, if the cash in the owner's wallet is less than the balance that's indicated in QuickBooks for the company cash on hand, then we assume that the owner spent the money for non-business reasons and simply did not have an opportunity to record that in QuickBooks. And at whatever moment you're reporting your financial information, you have to compare the owner's wallet to the balance of cash on hand, and if it's less, you have to record a withdrawal.
Chapter 12. Using Register Windows.
Every bank and credit card account in QuickBooks Desktop can be opened in a register window. Let's take a look. To open the register window, we click from the main menu, Banking, Use Register, and then we have a choice of which bank or credit card types of accounts we would like to open in a register window. We'll choose the Chase Bank account for now and then click OK. Notice this window looks just like the old registers in the old days when your grandparents used to write a check. They would take out a little book that looks like this, and they would record all the information about their checks and deposits. And that's what the look of this window is supposed to reflect. Notice there are 2 lines for each transaction, a white line and a green line, but the date and the name and the account and so on are spread out across those 2 lines. You can change the look of the register by clicking down here where it says 1 line, and it will condense each transaction into 1 line rather than 2. And for some people it makes it a little easier to see, but there's really no difference in using it and recording transactions and finding the balance after each specific transaction or each particular date, whether you click the 1 line or not. But what you should know is in the bottom left, you have the ability to sort the transactions in several helpful ways. For example, if you need to know the order the transactions were physically entered, regardless of the date that the transactions happened, you could do this. You could click down here in the bottom left where it says date, type, reference number, and so on. And if we make this a little squashed, you can choose order entered. Now, in our case, it didn't really change anything because for the most part, we've been recording transactions in date order. But it does get more interesting if you sort by amount. You see, if you click down here and you click amount, largest first, it'll make it easy for you to find the deposits and separate, well, for the large transactions from the smaller ones. And what it does is it starts the deposits from the highest to smallest, and it starts the checks from smallest to highest. But if you did the opposite, if you said amount smallest first, then what it would do is it would put the checks from largest to smallest and then put the deposits from smallest to largest. So that might make things a little bit easier to see, but the normal way to see it is to go by date first, then type, then reference number. So what else can we do? Well, you can edit any transaction just by clicking right on it and over-typing any data in the field. Let's open the January 3rd transaction and make it $1 million and see what happens. So if I squash the register into our field of view, I can scroll up to January 3rd. I can click where it says $1,000, push tab. Now it's $1 million. So when I click record and then click yes, you can see the total balance has become giant and crazy. But you can fix it just as easily. Click back, fix the number, push tab, click record, click yes, and the balance and everything else goes back to exactly the way that it was. Now, you may well ask, why do we need to bother using registers if we can already use the deposit window and the check window? Well, you can record all bank transactions in one place without opening the deposits for some windows, for some transactions, and checks for the others. But the interesting point here is that when you enter something in the register, the result will be the same as if you recorded it directly in the deposits or checks window. For example, let's imagine on January 19th, we deposited $2,200 into the Chase Bank account from Alan Arby for a video job. Well, what will be the result in the trial balance if we record this properly? Well, we have $2,200 more in video income, so video income will increase to $6,900. And we have $2,200 more in the Chase Bank, so Chase Bank will increase to $8,000. And that should be the result whether we record it in the original windows or the register. So in order to record something new, we scroll all the way down to the bottom. We click the date box and we go back to the date that we're dealing with. It's January of 2024. So we push 19 and make the year 2024. If there is no reference number, you should leave it blank until you find a receipt or some kind of number that the bank assigned. But the money came from customer Alan Arby, and the reason we got the money was video income. Now, clearly, we're going to put this in the deposit column on the same rows as the transaction. Type in the number and push tab. Now, when we click record, first the register shows us the correct bank balance, but when we open the trial balance, we see the bank balance is correct and the balance of video income correctly increased to $6,900. Now, as I mentioned before, the most important thing to note is if you reopen a transaction from a report, it will open in the original deposit or check window, and it will not reopen the register window. So watch what I mean. If I double-click Chase Bank 8000, remember I get a list of every transaction that led up to that balance. And you can see the January 19th transaction is recorded last. But if I want to reopen it from the report, when I double-click, the register window does not come up. The make deposit window comes up because the register is just a conduit to pass through to the deposit window. So you can edit the deposit here and the results will change the trial balance, but just be aware if you reopen a transaction from a report, the register window is not the one that will open. So let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 20, we paid Staples $150 cash from the cash on hand and received the paper receipt 8472123. So if we properly record this, what will be the result in the trial balance? Well, we know that we will have $150 less of cash on hand, so cash on hand will decrease to $800. And because we're paying Staples for supplies, supplies will increase by $150 and become $1,800. Now, we're not going to use the bank register. We're going to use the cash on hand register because that is also a bank type of account regarding keeping records. So we click Banking, Use Register, and this time we make sure we choose cash on hand. We click OK, and of course, there are much fewer transactions in the cash on hand register than there were in the bank register. But we can record this the same way. The date of the transaction is the 20th. We are paying Staples. Now notice QuickBooks remembers Staples goes with supplies expense, but you have to double check that because that won't be true all the time. And this is a payment because we're paying the money from cash on hand, $150. We push tab, and now that the transaction includes, it doesn't include everything. If in fact they give you a number, you have to put in that number as the receipt number, 8472123, and then we'll get this result. So, 8472. Now when we click record, the results in the trial balance are exactly as what we expected. The cash on hand had decreased to $800 and supplies expense became $1,800. And don't forget the most important point, that if you reopen a transaction from a report, it will open in the original check window. Let's reopen it and see what happens. If we double click cash on hand and then we double click this very last transaction, that specific transaction reopens in the check window, not in the register window, because the register is really a place where the transactions pass through to the original window. But you can still edit this and save it, and the results will be the same as if you edited this in the register window. Now, the third example is the most interesting. Let's imagine on January 21, Vonda made an ATM withdrawal of $400 from the company bank account and put the cash in the company cash lockbox. So what should be the result if we record this transaction properly? Well, we know we have $400 less in the bank account, so the balance of Chase Bank should decrease to $7,600. And we know that the cash on hand has $400 more, so it should increase to $1,200. But wait a minute. Which of the two registers should we record this in? The answer is either one. It does not matter if you record this in the cash register or the bank register. You see, if you choose to enter this into the bank register, you would simply enter it into the payment column because the bank is decreasing. And all you would have to do is remember to make sure to choose the cash on hand account for the account on the line in the transaction. Or you could instead enter this very same transaction into the cash on hand register, but in that case you would be recording it as a deposit. And when you record it as a transaction here, all you would have to do is make sure that the Chase bank account is the account chosen on the line inside the transaction in the register window. And when you finish, the numbers in the reports should all be the same. You choose and confirm the results yourself. So I'm going to allow you to record this without me and choose which particular bank account or cash account you want to put in when you use the register. And see if you can enter it without me and get these results when you're done. Keep going until you have these results, and I will see you in the next video.
Chapter 13. Managing Credit Card Transactions.
You see, the record keeping for a company credit card is exactly the same method as keeping records of your bank account. They both have plus and minus to the balance every time you have a transaction. But with a bank account, we give our money to the financial institution first, then we pay from the account for the things that we need in business. But with a company credit card, we pay from the account first, and then after that, we give our money to the financial institution to pay off the card. So it's the same transactions, but it's in a different order. And that's the reason why keeping records of a credit card is the same as keeping records of a bank account. In both cases, they both will show up as balances on the trial balance. So just like you have an account in the chart of accounts to show the balance on the trial balance of the bank account, you have another account in the chart of accounts to show the balance of your company credit card. And if you double click, you get a list of every transaction in the company credit card. Company credit card transactions should be recorded in the Enter Credit Card Charges window. And there are the same fields of data in this window as there were in all of the previous transaction types that we learned about. For example, let's imagine on January 22nd, we charged $1,700 to Con Edison for electricity, and we got this reference number on the slip after we swiped the card. So what will be the result in the trial balance after we record this transaction? Well, it's our first company credit card charge. So the company credit card American Express will show up in the trial balance for the first time as $1,700. And because we charged utilities expense, that will increase by $1,700 and become $2,800. So we can click credit card charge here, but you could also click banking, enter credit card banking, and then enter credit card charge. I like to open it from the icon bar. Now, here we are in the Enter Credit Card Charges window. And the first thing we have to check is to make sure we're charging from the correct company credit card account. Now we click the date box, go back, and hit January 2022, and make sure it's of the year 2024 in our little story. Put in the reference number from the card swipe, put in the money amount, and now put the reason. The reason we are charging is utilities expense, and the vendor whom we're charging it to is Con Edison. So basically it's the same as filling out the right checks window, except it's in the credit card charges window. That's how easy this is. So we click Save and Close, and when we look at the results in the trial balance, the results are exactly as what we expected. The company credit card showed up for the first time as $1,700, and utilities expense has increased to $2,800. Let's try a second example. Let's imagine on January 23rd, we charged $800 to Vonda's dentist for dental work, and we got this slip number when we charged the card. So what will be the result in the trial balance after this charge? Well, we now have $800 more charged on the American Express card, so the balance will increase by $800 and become $2,500. And the reason we charged the company credit card is because the owner paid a personal expense from the company credit card. So Vonda's withdrawals, that represents all the money the owner took from the company for non-business reasons, will also increase by $800 and become $1,300 after we record this transaction. So again, we could click banking, enter credit card charges, or we could just open it from the icon bar. And again, we make sure we have the right card chosen. We put the correct date. Now again, if it's an owner transaction, you don't have to put the owner's name, but you do have to put the reference number, which is the slip number on the card. And you have to put the correct money amount. And the reason why is represented by the account you choose, Vonda's withdrawals. Now when I click Save and Close, the results are exactly as what we expected. The Vonda's withdrawals increased to $1,300, and the company credit card balance increased to $2,500. And you can click refresh because for some reason the date won't advance unless you click refresh. So now let's see an example of actually paying down the credit card. Let's imagine on January 24th, we paid $700 with an online payment to American Express, specifically to decrease the balance of this credit card. So if that's the case, and we pay $700 to pay down the card, what will be the result? Well, we are paying from the company bank account, so the company bank account will decrease by $700 and become $6,900. And because we're paying it to decrease the company credit card, the balance of the credit card will also decrease by $700 and become $1,800. But wait a minute. What window do we record this into? The answer is we use the write checks window. That's the proper window to record paying down the balance of the credit card. And when you use the write checks window, you do it the same way that you always did, but the most important thing is to choose the credit card that you're paying from the list of accounts at the bottom of the window. Otherwise, it's just like any other online payment or any other check that we already learned about. So, again, $700 with an online payment to American Express to decrease the balance, and this should be the result when we finish. And what's the date? The date, January 24th. Okay, very simple. We open the checks window and we advance the date to January 24th. Now, let's make sure we have the right reference number, 111000. Okay, so the reference number, and we are going to put the money amount 700, and we're going to put the American Express credit card as the account we're paying. So now everything is correct. Now regarding the vendor, if a vendor is not on your list, you can add them on the fly by clicking Add New. And then you agree it's a vendor, click OK, and type only the name. Hit Enter, and now you have Amex on the list. You can always open the vendor center later and you can double click Amex to put whatever address or additional information you want to add when you're finished with the transaction, but you can always add a name on the fly at the moment you record any transaction. When we click Save and Close and click Refresh, the results are exactly as what we expected. The balance of the American Express decreased to $1,800, and the balance of the bank account decreased to $6,900. So now let's do an example of actually receiving a credit back on the credit card. Let's imagine on January 25th, Con Edison gave a partial refund to Vonda for the prior bill that was paid on January 22. That was an electric bill that we paid in a previous video or in a previous lecture, and now we're getting $100 credit back on January 25th, and that's the reference number. So if we record this properly, what will be the result in the trial balance? Well, the company credit card is going to decrease by the $100 credit because that's the point of getting a credit back in the first place. And because it was Con Edison crediting back our electric charges, utilities expense will decrease by the $100 that we just got back, and it will go from $2,800 to $2,700. And this is what the result should be if we record this properly. But before we go to record it, let's think about how to record it in which window. You will still use the Enter Credit Card Charges for credits back and refunds. The only difference is you have to choose, instead of the default for the purchase charge, you have to click Refund Credit, and the entire window will change to a credit of a credit card just by moving the little button over to this spot. And once you do that, you'll be able to record this transaction and get these numbers as a result. So let's go ahead and see how it looks. We open the credit card charges window, and the first thing we do is make sure we chose the right card. But the second thing we do is click this button, and the entire window changes to a window that's set up to give refunds and credits on your credit card. We advance the date to the proper date that we got the credit. We choose the vendor who gave us the credit. We put in the reference number 1122334. And then, of course, the computer remembers that Con Edison goes with electric expense, but you have to double check it, and you should put the money amount in the top of the window and push tab and confirm the bottom of the window has the same thing. When we click Save and Close and then click Refresh, the results are exactly as what we expected. The utilities expense decreased to $2,700, and the balance of the American Express company credit card decreased to $1,700, and that's how you handle company credit card transactions.
Chapter 14. Expenses paid by the owner.
Payments from the owner's personal, non-business bank and credit card for company expenses are capital investments into the company. When this happens, use the Capital Accounts Register window. All you have to do is right-click in the chart of accounts right on that account, and then a sub-menu opens up that will allow you to click Use Register. Then when the register window opens, we use only the increase column because every single time the owner pays a business expense from a non-business account, that is increasing the investment that the owner took from their pocket and put into the business. So every time a business expense is paid, it's the owner putting money into the business to pay more business expenses, and therefore only the increase column is used. So let's take a look. We click List, Chart of Accounts, and we click right on Vonda's Capital Investment. Now we right-click and choose Use Register, and the Capital Investment Register window opens up. Now notice it has the exact same look and feel as all the other registers that we dealt with in this course. Now let's take a look at our first example. Let's imagine on January 27, Vonda paid $80 from her personal non-business cash for company supplies purchased from OfficeMax, and this was the receipt number that she got. Well, if we record this properly, what should be the result in the trial balance? Well, the supplies expense now has $80 more that we paid because the company used $80 more in supplies. So that will increase by $80 and become $1,880. And because the money came from the owner's personal non-business funds, Vonda's capital investment will increase by the same $80 and become $4,080. Let's take a look. We click here and we make the date January 27 of 2024. Now again, in the owner-related transactions, we can skip the name if we're doing express bookkeeping. But the reason why her capital investment is going up is because she's paying more for supplies expense. And the person or the company she's paying is OfficeMax. So we choose OfficeMax, and remember, everything is an increase if the owner is paying personal funds for business reasons. We type in the money amount and push tab, and then we click record, and the balance in the register changes. Now when we look at the trial balance and click refresh, you can see Vonda's capital investment increased to $4,080 just like we expected, and supplies expense increased to $1,880. Now let's do a second example. Let's imagine on January 28, Vonda paid $120 from her personal non-business credit card for a company delivery from UPS, and that was the slip number. So what will be the result in the trial balance at the moment we pay more for delivery expense by $120 paid from the owner's card? Well, the delivery expense, of course, will increase by $120 and become $1,320. And because the money came from the owner's personal funds, the Vonda's capital investment will increase to $4,200. So, again, we can click List Chart of Accounts and right-click on the proper investment account and click Use Register. Now we advance the date to the proper date of the transaction. We were paying UPS, and we were paying for delivery, we were paying delivery expense. And of course, the memo, or really the number should be here. Even if the owner pays from their pocket, you should still include the source document number. And the money amount always goes in the increase column, $120. Now, when we click record, the register balance changes, and when we refresh the trial balance, the result is exactly as what we expected. The balance of the capital investment increased to $4,200, and delivery expense increased to $1,320. And now let's do our third and final example. Let's imagine on January 29th, Vonda paid $300 from her personal bank account for a company equipment repair from Rex Repair Shop, and the check number from her personal checkbook was number 213141. Well, what will be the result in the trial balance when she pays $300 more for repairs from her own personal pocket? Well, the company has $300 more in repair expense, so repair expense will increase to $1,300. And because the money came from the owner's pocket, Vonda's capital investment will increase by the same $300 and become $4,500. We could open it the same way, but you could also click Banking, Use Register, and simply choose the company, the Vonda's capital investment account, and click OK, and we go back to the very same register. Now, we advance the date to the date that she actually paid. She paid Rex Repair Shop, and the reason she paid was company repair expense. We always use the increase column, 300, and you should put the transaction number, which is the check number from her personal bank account, which was 213141. So we'll put that in. And when we click record, the balance in the register is reflected also when we click refresh in the trial balance. And Vonda's capital investment increased to what we expected, $4,500, and the company repair expense increased to $1,300. And that's the way you record personal funds paying for business expenses.
Chapter 15, The Final Project.
This is what the trial balance should look like right before you begin this exercise. It's the results of all the transactions that we entered in the entire course. You must make sure that your numbers are the same as mine before you begin the practical project exercise. This is also the transaction list by vendor before we begin the project. And if you compare this one by one to yours, you'll see if you recorded everything with the proper detail. And during this video, you may need to pause and keep the video at a specific moment in time to either compare to your numbers or at least to read off the transactions while you do the exercise. Now here are the first transactions that you'll enter as part of this video exercise. There's only 13 of them, and these transactions are exactly the same as the transactions that we recorded all during the course. And if you forget how to record any one particular transaction, you should go back to the part of the course where we learned that type of transaction and then come back here and record it the same way. Now, when you finish the first set, this is what your trial balance should look like. And when you're done, compare each of the numbers here to each of the numbers in your trial balance, and if there are any differences, you must use what we learned in the course to find and fix your mistakes so that your trial balance is the same as mine. And of course, it helps to see the transaction list by customer after the first set, so you can compare yours to mine to see if you need to make any changes. And of course, you should also compare your transaction list by vendor to my transaction list by vendor. And of course, I cannot fit the whole thing on one screen. So let's pause the video if you want to compare this to yours. And the second page of the transaction list by vendor is shown here. You can pause again if you want to make sure that it's all the same. But wait a minute. Why didn't I mention the customer transaction list? That's because right now in Desktop, it's very possible that your customer transaction list is missing stuff. Why is that? That's a special issue that relates to the register window, and I promise it will be clearly explained in the next video lecture chapter. And after you watch that chapter, you will see that you are an expert in using the register window in QuickBooks Desktop. Now here are the first transactions that you'll enter as part of this video exercise. There's only 13 of them, and these transactions are exactly the same as the transactions that we recorded all during the course. And if you forget how to record any one particular transaction, you should go back to the part of the course where we learned that type of transaction and then come back here and record it the same way. Now, when you finish the first set, this is what your trial balance should look like. And when you're done, compare each of the numbers here to each of the numbers in your trial balance, and if there are any differences, you must use what we learned in the course to find and fix your mistakes so that your trial balance is the same as mine. And of course, it helps to see the transaction list by customer after the first set, so you can compare yours to mine to see if you need to make any changes. And of course, you should also compare your transaction list by vendor to my transaction list by vendor. And of course, I cannot fit the whole thing on one screen. So let's pause the video if you want to compare this to yours. And the second page of the transaction list by vendor is shown here. You can pause again if you want to make sure that it's all the same. Now, here's the interesting part. I'm giving you now a set of 6 bonus transactions, and I assert that even though we did not exactly and specifically do these transactions, you should be able to do them from your knowledge and understanding of the course. Think about each one, think about the situation, and think about what windows to record them into and how. I'm absolutely sure that if you give yourself time with each of these, you should be able to record them. And after you record these, this is what your final trial balance should look like after recording everything in the course. And I know you'll remember how to find and fix any differences so that when you finish, your trial balance looks exactly like mine. It may also help you to see the transaction list by customer so that you can compare important details if you have any differences. And that should also help you find and fix mistakes if you have any. And this is page 1 of the absolute final transaction list by vendor. And you can pause it here if you need to. And here is the transaction list by vendor, the second page, showing everything up to the last transaction in the course. And again, please remember that your transaction list by customer is part of a special video that will follow this one regarding register windows, and it will be worth your while to watch this video because, again, after this video, you will be an expert in using the register window in QuickBooks Desktop. Then you can check your transaction list by customer and ensure that you have the same transactions. Thank you again for making it all the way to the end of the course, and I know this course will help you.
Chapter 16: Special Customer Issues and the Register Window.
You may notice that your transaction list by customer did not include all of the deposits that we received from customers for earning income. And you may well ask, why not? Why didn't it include those things? Well, that's a special issue regarding customers that relates to the register window. Now, what exactly is the problem? The problem that I'm identifying here might only be specific to specific versions, releases, or years, or even editions of QuickBooks Desktop. But in the Accountant's Edition of 2023, it's still an issue. You see, when you open the bank deposit window, this window, you may notice that the Receive From field, the field where you put the customer name who gave you the deposit, you may notice it doesn't work. And when I say it doesn't work, it means putting the customer there will not have the deposit show up in the transaction list by customer. And if you put the customer in that very same window, it will also not show up here in the customer center where you look and search through customer transactions. But if you record those same bank deposits from customers in the register window, then they will. And that's the reason why only the January 19th deposit from Alan is showing up on the transaction list by customer, because it was the only one that we recorded in a register window. It's also the only one showing up in the customer center in the transaction list for customers. So what do we need to do to fix this issue? Well, you should know that you can reopen them directly from the register and then re-enter them properly. Well, how do we do that? Well, you should know that when you look at a register window in QuickBooks Desktop, you can see that in the left margin next to the column of date, we have transaction number, and one row under that we have transaction type for the same transaction. You should know that if you click in the transaction type field for each individual transaction, the actual deposit or check will open up, and that will give you the ability to edit it in that window. So what am I talking about? Well, if I click Banking, Use Register, and I choose the Cash in Bank Register and click OK, here we are with our good friend, the Cash in Bank Register. Now look, if I double click where it says check for January 12th, I go back to the actual window and you see the data is all in this window that was in the January 12th row for the, in the register, and I can change anything I need. And that's also true for opening up a deposit. If we scroll up to the January 2nd deposit, where we got editing income, we don't know what customer, but we do know that we did record the customer in the deposit window. So if we click deposit, just like we click check for account transaction type, when we click deposit for transaction type on the row of January 2nd, the window opens up and we see we really did record a customer with this deposit, and QuickBooks didn't show the customer in any of the reports or even in the register. See, I double click, the customer's really there. So how do we fix this? Well, we're going to fix it now. Let's fix the January 2nd bank deposit from Betty, and we'll see if it does show up in those windows. So if I know that it's Betty, when I close this, I can just come here and I can choose Betty from the register and re-record the transaction. Click yes. Now look what happens when I open the transaction list by customer. Aha! Now, in addition to the Allen deposit, it has the Betty deposit. And if I click Customer Center, I can choose Betty's name, and her deposit will be listed there because I recorded it from the register window. Let's try the first one, January 1, double-click deposit on that row. See that? It was Allen. so we know it's Alan. So if we come back to the register and we choose Alan and re-record and click yes, now we know that, now we see that Alan has 2 transactions recorded, and so on. So that's the flaw, and that's the workaround. Now, of course, if we entered an invoice or a sales receipt and we had a larger company, in a case like that, obviously those would show up on the transaction list by customer without us having to deal with it. It's just a weakness in this deposit window for the name of the customer, and it's very strange. But here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Do the rest of the deposit yourself and fix them, and see if you can get the same transaction list by customer that I'm going to show you now. And here they are. All 5 deposits from customers properly listed on the transaction list by customer. And now you are at a higher level of QuickBooks Desktop than most other people. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way till the end. I know that this knowledge will help you. And just remember, if you need anything else regarding QuickBooks, just click on the kitty to come to the main channel page where you can choose from hundreds of other QuickBooks and QuickBooks Online topics, just in case there's anything else in QuickBooks that you need to learn. I know the channel page will help you, and please stay in touch.